Daily Words of God. The work of the last days is to speak words. Great changes can be effected in man by means of words. The changes now effected in these people upon their accepting these words are much greater than those effected in people upon their accepting the signs and wonders of the age of grace. For in the age of grace, the demons were cast out from man with the laying on of hands and prayer. But the corrupt dispositions within man still remained. Man was healed of his sickness and forgiven his sins. But as for just how man was to be purged of the corrupt satanic dispositions within him, this work had yet to be done. Man was only saved and forgiven his sins for his faith. But the sinful nature of man was not extirpated and still remained within him. The sins of man were forgiven through the agency of the incarnate God. But this did not mean that man no longer had sin within him. The sins of man could be forgiven through the sin offering. But as for just how man can be made to sin no more, and how his sinful nature may be extirpated completely and transformed, he has no way of solving this problem. The sins of man were forgiven, and this is because of the work of God's crucifixion. But man continued to live within his corrupt satanic disposition of old. This being so, man must be completely saved from his corrupt satanic disposition, so that his sinful nature may be completely extirpated, never to develop again, thus enabling the disposition of man to be transformed. This would require man to grasp the path of growth in life, to grasp the way of life, and to grasp the way to change his disposition. Furthermore, it would require man to act in accordance with this path, so that his disposition may gradually be changed, and he may live under the shining of the light, so that all that he does may be in accord with the will of God, so that he may cast away his corrupt satanic disposition, and so that he may break free from Satan's influence of darkness, thereby emerging fully from sin. Only then will man receive complete salvation. At the time that Jesus was doing his work, man's knowledge of him was still vague and unclear. Man always believed him to be the son of David and proclaimed him to be a great prophet, the benevolent Lord who redeemed man's sins. Some, on the strength of their faith, were healed just from touching the edge of his garment. The blind could see, and even the dead could be restored to life. However, man was unable to discover the corrupt satanic disposition deeply rooted within himself. Neither did he know how to cast it away. Man received much grace, such as the peace and happiness of the flesh, the faith of one member bringing blessing on an entire family, the healing of sickness, and so on. The rest were the good deeds of man and his godly appearance. If someone could live on the basis of these, they were considered an acceptable believer. Only believers of this kind could enter heaven after death, which meant that they were saved. But in their lifetime, these people did not understand at all the way of life. All they did was to commit sins and then confess their sins in a constant cycle. without any path to change their disposition. Such was the condition of man in the age of grace. Has man received complete salvation? No. Therefore, after that stage of work was finished, there still remained the work of judgment and chastisement. This stage is to make man pure by means of the Word, and thereby give him a path to follow. This stage would not be fruitful or meaningful if it continued with the casting out of demons, for it would fail to extirpate man's sinful nature, and man would come to a standstill at the forgiveness of his sins. Through the sin offering, man has been forgiven his sins, for the work of the crucifixion has already come to an end, and God has prevailed over Satan. But the corrupt disposition of man still remaining within him, man can still sin and resist God, and God has not gained mankind. That is why in this stage of work, God uses the Word to expose the corrupt disposition of man, causing him to practice in accordance with the right path. This stage is more meaningful than the previous one, as well as more fruitful. For now, it is the Word that directly supplies man's life and enables the disposition of man to be completely renewed. It is a much more thorough stage of work. Therefore, the incarnation in the last days has completed the significance of God's incarnation and completely finished God's management plan for man's salvation.